39 years old, the best shape of my life, so I thought. The last 2 words I ever thought I would hear, heart attack.
I was in so much pain, but I was stuck. My foot hurt, so I couldn't stand. My neck hurt, so I couldn't lay down. And my back was in so much pain with the herniated disc that I couldn't sit.
As I was standing there, my energy dropped out, my pain level was increased, my heart rate was quite elevated. I needed to sit down, and I found out my pulse was at about 150 and I wasn't doing anything.
A few years ago, I had an idea about how to raise awareness of the needs in Queens through running a triathlon. And I want to invite you to join me with that today as I walk beside, bike beside, run beside 3 friends of mine that I've met in my path. Each one of these men will be an encouragement to you because they've faced some very difficult times in life. And they needed endurance, not to just run the race, but have grace in their race of faith. It reminds me of Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, where the Bible encourages us to endure, fixing our eyes on Jesus. And he encourages us as his followers to take up our cross and follow him. So life will have these rough patches. Maybe you're in one of those rough patches today. As you hear these stories, perhaps you will identify with their difficulties in your life and the trials that you face, and you'll find principles that help you endure the life of faith, looking unto Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.
So I was in marathon training, 10 days out from running the Morgantown Marathon when things just went terribly wrong. It was a Wednesday night, and we were doing our Wednesday night Bible studies, and I was working with a couple when all of a sudden everything from my neck down started to go numb. I went out and I told my wife, I said, listen, something's wrong. I don't know what. I'll be in my office for a little bit. Go ahead and get church services started, and I'll be out when I can. I'm pretty sick. And I sat down in my chair in my office when all of a sudden I got this feeling right in my chest like I'd swallowed a 50-cent piece. I got up from my chair and I started to bang my back against the wall to get it to unlodge, and it wouldn't come out. And I thought, well, man, I need to go to the restroom. I'm going to be sick. I went into the restroom and I was in there probably just for a few minutes when some men in the church came in to check on me. And by the time they got there, I was on the floor, I was covered in sweat, and I knew something was terribly wrong. They drove me down to the urgent care. They got the EKG machine, brought it in, hooked me up, and immediately they knew it was not indigestion. I was having a massive heart attack right there in the urgent care. They got me in the ambulance and they started to take me to the hospital, and it's only a 4-mile drive, and they kept the siren on. And I looked at the boy sitting beside me. I said, listen, how bad is it? And he said, sir, it's really bad. You're dying and you're getting worse every second. They wheeled me in, and about 20 nurses and doctors were waiting for me at the ER. And another doctor comes and stands at the foot of my bed, and he looks me right in the eye and he says, you're gonna die any second, and those paddles are to bring you back to life when you do. My wife came in and she was beside me, she's crying. And I looked at her, I said, should I call the kids? You know, I have 4 kids, and I said, should I call them and tell them goodbye? You know, ages 6 to 11. And she said, we don't need all that extra emotion, you just gotta stay alive. And the doctors take her out, and I remember watching her leave the ER and thinking, this is the last time I'm ever gonna see my wife again. And just at that moment, God came to me and said, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? If you die, I've got your wife and your kids. If you live, I've got this too. Treg, why are you being so fearful? Just trust me.
Four years ago today, one Sunday morning, I stepped to the pulpit and my life changed drastically. As I was standing there, my energy dropped out, my pain level was increased, my heart rate was quite elevated. I needed to sit down, and I found out my pulse was at about 150 and I wasn't doing anything. As I sat there, Janie, the emergency room nurse, came and took my pulse and told me that I needed to go to the emergency room. In the back of my mind, for the last 10 months, God had been faithfully guiding me through every Sunday morning. Thursday of that week, following that Sunday, I ended up in the emergency room thinking that my appendix might be acting up. So come to find out, I was battling a parasite that I had contracted during ministry, going and visiting nursing home patients. And that had brought me, brought me to that point of health deterioration. While I was laying in bed, this phrase just was repeating in my mind, and it was this: embrace the trial. Embrace is something that you love, where trial is something you push away. And so this was a really interesting phrase for me to be meditating on.
In March 2020, everything here in New York was closed, but the one thing I could do was run. And I enjoyed running, but I ran a whole lot more and ran too much. I ran dozens and dozens of miles and unfortunately didn't let my body rest. And I tore a tendon in my foot. I saw a doctor and he had hoped for my tendon to heal on its own, and unfortunately it didn't. And so finally, after 3 months, he elected to do surgery. And I was in a walking boot for about 3 months prior to the surgery. And after the surgery, I committed to the healing and the waiting and the rehab. But unfortunately, because of my long legs, the doctors say in the walking boot, I herniated a disc in my back. And unfortunately, the disc that herniated was sitting right on a nerve and was just causing an intense amount of pain. And as a result of that, it was just excruciating pain for many, many months. As I was hoping and waiting for my foot to heal and my back to heal, I was putting all my weight and exercise on my left leg. And as a result of that, I tore a tendon in my quad. I walked into the doctor's office and just hoping to get good news. And the doctor sent me for more testing. And on an MRI, they noticed some spots on my kidney. And the doctors were concerned about that and sent me to get some cancer testing. And it was discouraging for sure. In January, God gave my wife and I a beautiful baby girl. In February, I finally began to notice healing in my body. And my foot finally started getting stronger. I was able to slowly walk a mile. I was able to sleep a little bit better at night, and my body was starting to get rest. As I continued to heal, God just made it so abundantly clear how close He was to me. He taught me so many things about His character, His love for me. He taught me about my priorities. I'm so grateful that God continues to heal me. My body's getting stronger. I'm running longer distances. I'm currently training for the Boston Marathon. I'm so excited about that. I don't just run to race, but life is a race. And the Bible talks about that. And each of us have our own race to run. And yet God gives us the grace to finish. And we're so grateful for His love and His grace.
When I look back over this time, a quote that comes to mind that's really been helpful is that God never wastes the suffering of His saints. I never thought I'd be able to exercise to any degree. And through the process of diet change, strict diet change, and beginning to slowly come back through exercise, God has brought me to the place where now I'm actually cycling with Tim in this triathlon. So it's an amazing. While I was down, I realized that this was going to be an endurance race. And the Lord really impressed upon my heart that in order to endure, I need to embrace this trial, that God was using this in my life in a profound way to strengthen and encourage me, to grow me in my faith.
So the doctors told me I'd made it, but what they didn't tell me is how long of a road it was going to be before I could get back to the life that I enjoyed. Unfortunately, it wasn't just running, it was life in general. I didn't want to leave the house. I just wanted to lay on the couch. As I'm laying there one day, I got a phone call from a buddy of mine. He's like, Treg, let's go to lunch. Now, I hadn't done anything for weeks. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see anybody. And I said, well, let me think about it. And then immediately God brought these two words to me. It was the same words that he told Joshua to get up. In Joshua chapter 1, I think Joshua was laying his tent in discouragement. I think he was depressed. And that was a pivotal moving point for me in getting up and going on with life. To go from there, 4 years ago, and now being back to swimming and cycling and running again, and even to be here and able to swim with Tim is it's a miracle of what God done, but it didn't happen overnight. It took time. And so it's an endurance race. It takes faith, and you've got to trust the Lord, and then you just got to be willing to put in the time, and God just stays faithful through all of that, and then we can see it come through in the end.
I hope the stories of these men's endurance race of faith have been an encouragement and blessing to you. Our church has entered an endurance race. We're trying to build a building. Over the years, 12, 13 years, we've spent $300,000 already in rent. So we can have a space of our own where people can worship, where there is a place, a lighthouse in the middle of our neighborhood, the middle of Queens. Densely packed place, melting pot of people all over the world. Would be honoring to God, and we would love for you to join us. This is one of those races you can step with us. We've taken some steps. We've gone a little way, but we really need help. There's millions of steps to go. So the Lord would lay it on your heart to join us in this race. We would really appreciate it. I hope the stories have been a blessing to you, an encouragement to you in your walk of faith, and I hope you'll be an encouragement to us in this walk that we've begun as a church. And God bless you today.